Welcome to the EmpowHERment Show, a podcast designed to empower women like you to take control of your lives, make informed decisions, and redefine success on your own terms, beyond the noise of influencer culture. All right, welcome back. We have Claire on for part 2. So if you didn't tune into part 1, it's up and you can go find it on anywhere you listen to podcasts, people. So what are you waiting for? But we're really excited to dig in with Claire on something we teed up on the last episode, tech. So all of us have worked in and around tech in some way, shape, or form. And it's a difficult industry. Let's just put it that before we dive in. And Claire, you said something to us when we were preparing. You said tech broke your heart. Can you tell our audience the story of that heartbreak and how it really brought you to what you're doing today with Obscure?
Yeah, I think that I'll start by saying heartbreak cannot exist without deep love existing. So I think sometimes we say like, oh, I'm heartbroken by this thing, but it's something that didn't matter. I think true heartbreak it can only exist when you've loved something really deeply. And so for me, since I can remember, I wanted to be in tech. And I had uncles that were in tech, and it was like the late 90s, and it was .com boom. And I was like, this is cool, and this is a great way to make money. And I could go be kind of an outlier and be on the fringe and be a woman in tech. And this was before Girls Who Could Code, before Girl Boss, before like pink glitter in your face and rah, rah, rah. Which is all important and great, by the way. But it was before all of that. And I just kind of was drawn to it. And I think I was drawn to the disruption. I was drawn to the innovation. I was drawn to something that was just really different and really fast, and something that was misunderstood. And I think those were also qualities of myself. I was like very disruptive as a child. I like to innovate and make new things. I was misunderstood and I moved really fast. And I was like, oh, those are my people. And so I say that as a part of my story, like I had this commercial and creative blend. And at all of life's most pivotal moments, I felt like I always had to choose between the art or the science. And when I got to college, I chose the science, and I chose it pretty hard. And I said, I'm going to go be computer science. And that was my technically blonde era of coding by day, sorority by night. And when I was doing that, I got my dream job about 3 years early. And that was to go be a co-founding member of a team that was starting a tech platform, community first, event oriented, before Instagram or any of these platforms existed, really kind of brought content to people's hands. And it was content of parties and events and concerts, and it brought people together. And I really got behind that. I was like, okay, there's a place that people can convene online. I like people convening, but there's some technical aspect that lets people do that scalable, in a fast way, in a disruptive way. Like, this is it. We also had incredible investors. And so I yanked myself out of school and thought I was taking 6 months off, went and helped launch this platform, WeGo. And that was then later bought by a competitor to the popular platform back then, Vine, that was focused on content aggregation. And I was young, I was 19, so I didn't really understand the whole ins and outs of M&A. And I just was like, okay, this is cool. My company got bought. I'm going to go and move to San Francisco, where I always wanted to be. And I'm going to work.
Mergers and acquisitions for listeners who.
Yeah, sorry. M&A, mergers and acquisitions, which I didn't even know what that meant. Back then, I was like, M&A. Yeah, totally. Cool. And anyway, so I landed out in San Francisco, and the company that purchased ours, I found out was seeding harmful content. And to define what harmful content means, you can use your imagination, but it was bullying. It was, in often cases, explicit naked photos of people in their worst moments. That's how I'll define it. That were being seeded onto a platform, shared and promoted for virality and for eyeballs. And this was also the era where eyeballs, how many viewers, how many people were interacting with your content, was kind of the ultimate success metric. And I think still is for many of these platforms. They operate from that Genesis metric. And so at 20, I decided I wasn't here for that. And I raised my hand and I broke my contract, and I was told to find the door if I had a problem with it. And so I left. To this day, one of my very best friends was the only other female in the business. She's incredible. We're still like this. And she walked out that door with me that day. I marched myself down the street, went to another content aggregator. So that was part one of the heartbreak, was seeing people exploit other people's livelihoods and in exchange for a couple more eyeballs, a couple more clicks, a couple more dollars. And I just knew that wasn't right. I didn't know a lot, didn't know what M&A meant, but I knew that wasn't right. And I had an ally. I had somebody who said, I'm with you, and I'm also going to walk out this door, and I'm going to give up my job, and I'm going to give up some of my livelihood.
I mean, that's huge. How old were you at the time?
I had just turned at that point 21, because I wasn't using a fake ID anymore.
Wow.
Am I allowed to say that? Yeah. So I
like,
was
you're like doe-eyed, new to the workforce, new to tech, and you're working in an industry you had always, aspired to be in. And so, to have that experience at such a young age is really, really formative.
And it was sort of the great unknown, right? I think we often glamorize what is unknown. In more recent years, I've had a front row seat to that in Hollywood and in more of the media and entertainment side, but it's really no different. I actually, also having grown up in DC, think that armed me to navigate tech and entertainment because I watched how politics and policy worked, and I watched how things like nepotism and bribery, even just from afar, can play a role, right? It's not always, right? But you have to sort of know what the signals are. And so I think I was primed and prepped for this world that I thought was my dream world. I just didn't expect to be so disappointed so soon. Part two of the heartbreak was actually the place I went after, which was also doing content aggregation. And I watched a room full of the most brilliant product minds craft content aggregation, which is for listeners now what we all consume on TikTok and Instagram. Basically just content coming from different platforms, different people, organized in ways that then we can consume it and sort of make sense of it or subscribe to it. And that platform was before the big ones that we now know. So it was ahead of its time, but I watched a room of incredibly brilliant developers, engineers, product managers who had come from huge successes, like at the time, Yahoo, Twitter, even, places like Facebook before Instagram and video was really a part of that. So I watched this room of really incredible people. They had lots of money, which is always good. Lots of people that believed in them, investors, advisors, and just like truly the full lineup, the full bench. And I watched a leader who was not necessarily a bad person or a bad player, but was a little bit of that founder persona who had vision, sort of, but no purpose and no sense of the responsibility of something being handed to people outside of the four walls of that office of brilliant people. Uh-huh. And I just was heartbroken at somebody who was placed every piece of the puzzle and couldn't really get out of their own way. And so I felt lost. At this point, I was like almost 22. And so I went back.
Your life crisis prime.
Yeah. And I had a reset. And that was where I was introduced, and the heartbreak started to be mended to the magic that tech can be, right? And the magic that content and media can be. And I got an incredible job that was really kind of the big rocket ship of my career with EverFi, where I met Maddie and Adama. And they were still using the same equation, right? Lots of great investors, lots of great advisors, tons of sort of fame and eyeballs and celebrity. But they were actually building content that taught people how to navigate this new crazy world that we're all evolving in consistently, how to do your taxes, how to show up as a decent person, how to ask for help when you need it if you're battling something like assault or addiction. And they were building that content, partnering with partners who had corporate dollars to invest, and then putting that in schools in a responsible way that was free to students, regardless of their zip code, regardless of their income. Back to our earlier point on sort of the democratization of content and how that can be a powerful thing, but it relies on infrastructure. And so, that was the beginning, I think, of the mend of my heartbreak. And maybe that'll inspire some other questions, but I'll pause there.
Yeah.
On kind of the heartbreak, and it's a work in progress. We have a complicated relationship.
Oh gosh, don't we all, with our jobs and our employers and our industries? Like, it's
the longest relationship you'll ever have. I think I told you that on a call one time, Maddie. It's the longest relationship you'll aside from siblings, your career and your dreams and aspirations.
Yeah. But it's funny, Claire, because we met, in case people haven't listened to part one, Claire and I met at a conference that her employer and my employer were both sponsoring. And we were there on behalf of our companies. And, we were younger than the other clientele by like 25 to 30 years. And so we immediately zeroed in on each other. I was like, okay, tall blonde, short blonde, unite. And we went and we were like taking photos, like the simple life. We were like taking photos and videos on this farm in the middle of Kansas City where we were having dinner that night. And I was just like, who is this chick? Like, we just were having so much fun, but we were also, like using these things. And, I posted a funny story at one point, and Adama, you actually responded to my story, and you were like, and she was my boss at this point, by the way. So my boss is like looking at what Maddie's up to, and she's like, what is she doing? She's on a farm. She's having what? Chickens?
I was like, I sent this girl. Like, what is going on?
We were, and I was like, don't worry, I'm working, boss. Like, there's things happening here. But I was actually meeting one of my best friends in life.
A wagon.
Right. Anyway, so that's how we had met, and we've been friends now for almost 10 years, which is crazy. And I was talking about this on our last discussion too. Like, Claire, I've never really understood. You're like one of those friends where I'm like, what the hell does she do? Because like, I see you at all these events, I'm talking to all these people, and you were at the announcement of the Creator Economy Caucus in DC last week, and I was just like, what is this girl? And I've just been so fascinated and inspired by you and like the space that you're in, and I'm really excited to dig in even further with you on all the topics.
I say pretty frequently too these days, be easy to recognize and impossible to label. That's kind of my vibe. Like,
I love that. I'm going to use that because I'm like Big Bird. You cannot miss me.
Yeah. Like,
so what do I do?
To recognize, but don't get too comfortable in any labels or titles these days.
I really, really like that too.
Yeah. I think I've gotten similar political advice, right? Like, you have to choose the box you're going to be in. Otherwise, everyone will pick one for you. And so, like, who are you? If you don't know, and if you don't define it or undefine it and leave it open, then other people will, right? And I think it's so important to not allow people the room to tell you who you are.
Yeah. Well, and that, I think, to hear you say, like, you looked at a founder and realized that wasn't who you wanted to follow, like whatever it was they were doing. And, it's so difficult in your career. And especially, I think, in tech, which is just a little bit different than other industries where the founders and the executives are so forward in the company, right? Like, a big part of tech, if you're in that bubble, there will be whole cohorts that are following one person, right? Or, one person will leave and they will take an entire team with them. And, as people in the team move up, they know that the next wave is next. And tech is just very different than other industries that I've been in and around in that way. And you do follow like dynamic leaders because you're like, oh, well, this guy, he IPO'd this, or this woman IPO'd this. So we know like whatever he or she does next, like I'll follow them because they'll probably, and it's very different that way. So I get it, because working with or for a charismatic leader or somebody that you respect or that you love what they're doing, and then suddenly you realize that the persona doesn't match maybe what you've built or what you've ascribed to them or what you would hope or what you would want from someone who's doing something that could be so impactful, could touch so many people to suddenly realize that they're not doing it with the care or the thoughtfulness, or they're doing it in a really reckless way. It's heartbreaking to come to that realization.
I actually think there's something in there, like we've joked for a long time that politics is Hollywood for ugly people. And there's something to it, right? Because you have people that run to politics that are charismatic and people follow them, but it can be really superficial. It doesn't have to be, but it can be extraordinarily superficial. And there is always this relationship, particularly in California, where like Hollywood folks will come up to work on a bill and everyone will get their photo up. And the bill could just be utter garbage. But if you get the right celebrity there, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, that influence culture works there too. But I think there's a similar proxy to the sort of like building and motivational piece of politics, where people will really hitch themselves to a candidate or a politician and say, no, this person's really building something that will impact people, that'll change, that's new, that's different. And I want to be a part of it. And they will attract people behind them. And sometimes those people really do. And sometimes they don't, right? When the Me Too movement exploded, I know Adama and I personally got so many calls from people who were angry at us. Like, why did you talk about this? Because now this particular politician can't be around anymore. And it's like, well, he's not the person you thought he was, right? And that shatters people, and worse, it shatters institutions. And I think across these type of constructs, you have almost this internal communities that will push you to keep bad people in their place, people who don't have others' best interests at heart, because it's good for everyone. It's good for the platform. It's good for the institution. And whether that's a political platform or a tech platform, there is this huge peer pressure to keep kind of the founder syndrome folks in place, even if people can unilaterally agree inside the team that some things are at best messy, not worst, predatory or really terrible. And that's hard to deal with.
At New York right now, I mean, Andrew Cuomo is running for governor. He is being supported. Bill Clinton gave him money. Bloomberg gave him a bunch of money, millions of dollars. And yet there are 13 women who have credible, substantiated claims of harassment and discrimination from him. And yet people are giving him money to run again. So I definitely feel you. Like, I feel what you're talking about when you say like it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I think it also comes back to this word of like influence, right? We've given a lot of, there's no nice way to say this, but we've given a lot of idiots influence to be incorrect, right? We've given a lot of people who don't actually necessarily like have the expertise. And that's, again, not to take away from a stroke of luck or a brilliant vision that, all the cards kind of fell.
Well, you can be an incredible founder. You can be an incredible developer. You can have an amazing idea. You can write it down on the back of a napkin and it can change the world. You can still be a rapist. You can still be a racist. You can still be a misogynist. You can still be a horrendous narcissistic leader. Those things don't change the fact that you might have had an idea that changed the world, or you stole an idea that changed the world.
Yes, who's to say? But I do think that is a really like important concept if we're going to talk about the creator economy, if we're going to talk about the word influencer, like that is where it can get really out of hand, is somebody who has or demonstrates, they may not even have it, but they demonstrate in some cases a false sense of being a visionary, being powerful, being an expert, right? Giving them a platform that isn't controlled, right? On the macro or the micro. It doesn't matter if you have 5 followers or 5 million followers or 500 million followers if we get to Kardashian level, right? Like you have a thing and a place that you fully control, and it gives you full control to be idiotic or incorrect or really impactful, right? But we've just, I think, put so much emphasis and responsibility on individuals that has never before existed, right? You always, you had your town square, you had your newsletter or your column, but nothing of this scale until now.
Right. And platforms grow. I mean, that's the point, right? They grow. And so people who maybe would have just had a small central group. I mean, I just watched the Mayor of Mayhem, the Rob Ford documentary the other night. And, here's someone who he has certainly had advantages and nepotism and otherwise, but it was really the sort of like platform growth that went international of the people just picked up on him, right?
Well, and that's like an interesting story, right? Because what everybody said about Rob Ford was that he was a retail politician. Rob Ford would deliver your mail, he would walk your dog, he would clean your windows, he would watch your kid. Whatever you needed, Rob Ford would do that, which is an amazing testament about a politician. And that's why he had so much support early, right? But then as he starts to blow up, you start to see all of the holes that elevated platform puts on display, right? If he was running around and like smoking or drinking a little bit on the weekend when he was the city council member, it's not a big deal. But all of a sudden, when you are the mayor of a large metropolitan area, the platform is bigger and the fall is so much bigger.
Yeah. So I think we're like so many points are converging as we're talking about all this. Like Claire, when you were saying tech broke your heart and your story, I sort of had that same experience, but with politics around the same age. The reason though that it actually broke my heart was because tech enabled us to see behind the veil what politicians are like in their everyday lives. And like nowhere was that more apparent than when we saw the recording of what Donald Trump said about grabbing a woman by her pussy. Like you see people for who they really are now through these platforms. And some people just don't care and others do. But like that really, really rattled me because I was such a like passionate Politico from the time I was 5, and then all of a sudden I was like, wait, what? They're not trying to save the world? They're not trying to uplift people?
I was in New Orleans for my birthday when that video came out. And I remember I was at the W in New Orleans and it ruined my night. I was sitting there watching it, like, I don't know, drinking a champagne and eating a bucket of chitlins, but like
that chitlins, Sam.
It was a great day until that moment. Anyway.
But it is like sort of
that wasn't a joke, actually. Anyway. So whatever, I'm watching this thing and you know what this goes back to an episode we just recently recorded. You know what I knew when I saw it? That it was going to go viral and it was going to help because men were going to like it. As much as I wanted to throw up about the idea of a presidential candidate talking about grabbing women's pussies on a movie studio backlot, I knew men, including men in my life, were going to be like, hell yeah, grab her pussy. And it did. His polling went up after that. And that is the terrifying thing about, virality and platforms is, and I think one of the reasons that we all come to camaraderie and we love, Claire, having women like you on the show is we want a counter to whatever elevating that. Like, because it just feels so disempowering when you're like, this is actually the most offensive, horrible, terrifying thing. And it's everywhere. And people seem to like it. No.
Yeah. So this is something that we talked about on the episode prior. Like we were talking about how consumers are smart, and can like weed out the bullshit or, like find the information or the people they like. But maybe I'm just a cynic, but like I think consumers are smart, but I also think people are mean.
Well, and I would say too, mean is a part of a bigger picture, which is the like entertainment category, which I think grew to a different industry and a different economy that's facing its own challenges in sustaining that economy. But like entertainment, a core pillar of entertainment is comedy, right? And comedy has always towed a line. And that's now playing out on these platforms and in the creator economy and influencer world of what is too far, what is satire and skit.
We totally lost that.
Versus what is just purely mean and wrong and gross.
Yeah.
And I think that that is going to be, back to our conversation on the previous episode of where platforms come in and the categorization, the tagging of content. I'll give a shout out to Alexis Ohanian, former founder of Reddit. And a lot of this was in the DNA of Reddit. He's now building a lot of this into platforms like Dig, which he just sort of revamped. I'm super curious, and I have my eye on what newer platforms are going to do to properly categorize content, match it with segments of community, so that, you know, instead of just like hoping and wishing and praying that we're serving you the content that you will find engaging, but we also might offend you, that, you know, people actually know and expect what they are coming to a platform for, and they're not going to be totally thrown off. I don't think it will solve this issue, but I do think it is a step in the right direction of informed consumers of content, the same way we sort of are informed on what we go and buy at the grocery store because we can look at a label, sort of, keyword there.
Right.
But like, you know, consumers of content are still consumers. So how can that be better categorized and optimized, so that we at least know what we're expecting before we're exposed?
I think there's a lot of education that we've lost over the last like 30 or 40 years, especially.
I was even going to say 5 years, but yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
All of the above.
Yeah. Just around civics. I mean, there seems to be this like equation of like, it's funny and it's entertaining and that's what we recognize. And so politics and politicians have started to lean into that instead of going the other direction and saying like, you know, I mean, people now are like laugh at Barack Obama and laugh at like the fact that he was like very erudite and like very much an orator, and, you know, like it's been reduced to this like lowest common denominator where like it's funny and it's entertaining and I like that, and I like things that look like that, and so when my politicians look like that, I like that too.
Well, I think it's even,
and I 100% agree with you. And I think the GOP, because like the reason politics broke my heart, just being like super transparent, was because like I, up until 5-6 years ago, was like, I was a diehard like GOP fan. That was how I was raised. It's how I grew up. And then all of a sudden I saw this party switch to like slapstick comedy and sexist jokes. And
you also said something. You also said I was a diehard GOP fan, right? Like you didn't say I was a conservative because I believed in fiscal policy, or I believed in conservative monetary policy, or I believed in smaller government, or like there's like, and this is like part of the switch, right? Like I was a fan of the GOP. I liked the Democratic Party, not I like robust worker protections. I like robust like regulatory protocols. Like that's,
and I think that comes to the categorization point, right? In every decision that we should be making, we should be thinking about like, what are the values or what are the feelings that I'm actually seeking versus just what am I getting? And I think that we have to reverse and
that's right. Because it becomes easy to leave the GOP or easy to leave the Democratic Party if you are a fan or you like the politicians or you like what they're saying, and it becomes less sticky because it's not about the policy, it's not about the party, and it's not about the platform. And that's why, frankly, what we're watching with the Republican Party is so distressing, because it is a complete and total abandonment of platform and policy. It is, and that's why people get so confused, but it is a fascist party. When your platform does not have policy underpinning it, that is fascism. It's something completely different.
So I want to hear Claire's thoughts on this, but like you you know, as normal.
And I'm not trying to jump on you, but I'm just saying
now. You're articulating like the feelings that I had in a way that like I just couldn't like articulate because you're infinitely smarter than me and I will die on that hill.
10 years older.
18 exact. Anyway, I did have these actually strong policy views, and I do have values that I really dug into over the years since I had this like what like come to Jesus moment, literally, where I'm like, what is this? Who am I? And I
you
realized
see how those policies are able to switch party because they're actually policy based, not just party based.
Yeah. Sam, what were you gonna say? Yeah.
I was going to say, this is actually like, you know, ever since Democrats lost the last election, the presidential Kamala lost, there's been this sort of push online on platforms with influencers that like the Democratic Party just needs to get mean. Like we just need to counter how mean and gross they are being by being equally as gross and mean. And I find that to be one of the sort of like most offensive pretenses, and there are certainly people that are trying to pick it up, and you see it where they're like, the conservatives are stupid, they're all racist, their
makeup is bad, like they look bad,
right? And if you know, it's like they find the picture of the guy with the biggest beer gut and a camo shirt, and they're like, you know, who's got a misspelt t-shirt or something, and they're like, this is what you stand for. And it really becomes like this petty party of projecting, you know, things upon the other that is just back and forth, and that otherizes you. Like, ha ha ha, you're fat. Well, you're a nerd. Well, you're this, you know, and
it doesn't get us anywhere. But it doesn't do anything for policy, by the way.
Predicated on, you know, the same sort of ethos that just gets clicks, right? It's why you see some influencers between the first and second Trump election, and I won't name them, but there are a few who sort of started on the Dem side for Bernie and then went over to Trump and have gone back and forth. It's very clear that they're being paid, that they're monetized, and that they will adapt to, you know, whatever they can do. There's quite a few women that do it, frankly, that will just get clicks, right? And will get people feeling some kind of way. And to your point, Adama, it has... And I don't think I realized one of other than it's just mean spirited and pointless and doesn't improve anything or get us anywhere. To your point, like it, I think actually what makes me more offended that I haven't articulated until you just said it is that it has absolutely fucking nothing to do with any public policy that helps any person at any given time. And so the premise that we should just be meaner to people who are in a different political party to get somewhere, the somewhere is nowhere. The somewhere is chaos. The somewhere is garbage.
Yeah. And I think it's also just about getting louder, right? Like it doesn't have to be meaner, but it's getting more prescriptive. It's getting louder, right? I think that using these platforms and these distribution channels and these spokespeople, right, is a great tool, but all the more reason to know exactly how to navigate them and where and how you show up on each of them. And as new ones emerge and old ones start to fizzle, you know, how do you show up on Instagram, right? I think, how do you show up on Twitter? How do you show up on X when the leaders of these platforms also shift and change? Like, what does that also mean, right? Like you see the exodus of X when it was, you know, Elon's, or it is Elon's, and even that, right? Like that's a whole new layer that we haven't really ever had to navigate in past political cycles, in past even just consumer cycles. So, you know, I think it's getting louder, it's getting more focused. I think it's also, you know, showing what the party and the community can stand for and where each of those issues, Adama, to your point, fall, right? And again, it's not so prescriptive where it's like it's this or that, right? But it's generally, where do you want to go? Generally, what do you want to see? And whatever gets us closer, let's present that story. It's all storytelling,
right,
at the end of the day. And you can tell a horror film, you can tell a really shitty comedy, Or you can tell a story of authenticity and heartbreak and accountability and strength too of certain topics that really matter. But it is exposure, it is education, and it is that visibility and voice. Like that stuff all matters. And I do think that's maybe where the Democratic Party lost a little bit of the umph and the pizzazz, was being a little bit too lukewarm on a lot of those channels, right? And
well, and not recognizing that things have changed, right?
Yeah.
Like I think,
or recognizing they've changed by sending out a million messages that say, "Oh my God, those people are terrible. Give us your money." And like, I'm so tired of that. Like, I'm so tired of it.
It's about, again, like, where can we go? What's the story we're going to try and tell? And it's not an easy one, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And it is also some like looking inward and accountability and relatability. And I've used these words previously in this conversation, but like, get that authenticity, get the accessibility to win the authority. Don't try to just come in on a high horse with a ton of authority, yapping big words and criticizing and pointing fingers. Like, start to get out on the street and tell some real stories and share some real perspectives and convene people that aren't just the spokespeople and the candidates.
Claire, how do you think that candidates and or specifically Democratic Party, like something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is like, especially with the creation of the Creator Economy Caucus, like I think Democrats are actually very well positioned to support and be conduits and champions of this new era of careers, of small businesses, of creatives. They cannot figure it out right now. I don't know what their message is. I don't know what their strategy is. But I feel like when I just take a step back, I'm like, the GOP aligning with people who are creating content on all these platforms, like just one thing does not add up to the other, right? So if you were to give any advice to anybody in Democratic circles who's trying to figure out how they can empower this, new sector and, it's all about democratization, of access of content. Like, how might they position themselves strategically?
So, I mean, as a citizen and not a policy expert, but as a citizen, my observation, sort of to my previous point, is I do think the Democratic Party has lost a little bit of what made it so amazing, which was like being the party of the people, being the party of the hard workers, fighting for democracy and for the rights and the democratization of things so that people could have better opportunities and there was more equality. And again, I think the story that was told from a citizen's perspective was sort of the opposite. It was like, oh, like it's still an us versus them, but like the them is undefined, but there's an us. And I think that with the Creator Caucus and with the Creator Economy and with now 57% of Gen Z saying they want to be influencers as their full-time jobs. I think that's the latest stat.
Me too.
Adama just aged a decade.
Yeah,
literally my soul just left the body.
Me too. I'm ready. I'm ready to retire, ladies. Let's do it.
Yeah. There wasn't even a tax status for social media being an industry or for influencer being a job. There's 22,000, I think that's the right number, 22,000, check me on that, possible jobs that you can list on your taxes, including pickled onion farmer and canoe repair, but not social media creator, influencer, whatever.
Oh, the write-offs have barely even caught off. I mean, I remember, I started a third company during COVID at the beginning, and we were doing everything online. And, it was like everything's virtual. I'm buying like, any number of things to be online. It was like, we can't write that off. And I'm like, but I have to have it to do my job.
And I think that all that, and what Democratic leaders can do, to your question, Maddie, I think business owners like structure. They like exposure. They like expectations. They like to know how much they're going to pay in taxes, to your point, Sam, right? They want to even be able to file their taxes, right? They want to at least be able to operate in the chaos of rules and the chaos of structure that we try to impose. So, I think that Democratic leaders, every leader, right, has to make that as simple and accessible as possible. It also has to be super fucking clear, for lack of a better term, on, what those expectations are, what that can look like. Another area that we haven't touched on yet, but I'm super passionate about, is what are the support and care systems and infrastructure that are in place for this new emerging subset of business owners. There's some really great work. I'm going to give another shout out to and for any creators. Cheryl Lazar, who's a dear friend of mine and an incredible leader. She's also a creator herself. She has launched Creator Care, which is the first sliding scale therapy resource for creators that allows insured and uninsured in the state of California to have access to therapy. Because if you have one brand deal that you were relying on paying your next 6 months of rent and groceries and gas and basic living, and that falls through, that is a type of stress that an individual takes on and doesn't have severance or a coworker, or even in some cases, friends and family to call and understand and empathize. So, on top of that, being able to produce content, on a moment's notice, or, you have all of these conflicting elements in your day job. So anyway, I think, long way of saying, I think that leaders can, one, simplify, make it accessible, translate the ins and outs of policymaking and what applies and what rules and what a TikTok ban could mean or couldn't mean. Like, it shouldn't be on creators who are powering this whole ecosystem and this whole economy. It shouldn't be on them to go and figure it out. And so, I think that's why a bipartisan group and caucus is so important with this, for that education, exposure, simplicity, and accessibility. But that has to be 360. It's not just resources that we know, it's resources we don't know.
Do we have numbers on how many people are part of this economy?
So right now, I believe the latest stat, other than 57% of Gen Z wanting to be it, is right now at least 30 million people globally.
In the US alone, in the US alone, 50 million people identify as content creators. Roughly 2 million make a full-time living out of it.
Yeah.
My soul just left my body again.
Well, we got to remind you. You know what I think is so amazing about even just talking about creator care is, as someone who has owned 3 businesses, who most of my adult life has been an entrepreneur and a single parent. So, the weight of how do you pay for your employees and your healthcare and your rent, and what if a contract goes through or the economy dips, or, it's profound. I mean, it's probably why I'm on 3 blood pressure medications. But I do think that in terms of regulators and government, it's so much easier to focus on the big businesses that already have the infrastructure, and they don't focus on the small businesses, the independent businesses. They often get left so far behind. And one of the things that I think is so interesting about the creative community coming forward is that because it's sexy and because to your point, so many young people want to do this and it's what everyone's watching. And it is transformative in terms of not only how we view content and how we view hobbies and what people have for options as a job, but I think there's such an opportunity to platform that community for things that have really been traditionally underserved, independent contractors, small business owners, small community businesses who haven't gotten sort of the attention of government or regulators on how to sustain, and have always lived sort of hand to mouth. And so what a great opportunity for people with such a huge platform to shine a light on those things that I think have been pervasive even prior to
it having this kind of spotlight and being something that's so online.
Yeah. I will add to one thing I have my eye on is the pendulum swinging back. And
you kind of teed us up in the last episode. Yeah, same
we sort of teed it up. And I think as it relates to policy too, like right now that number is 50 million that we know of, right? 50 million that identify as influencer or content creator.
By the way, that could just be like Maddie posting random things. Oh, like people are like self-selecting, saying they're content creators.
Somebody who's spending enough time and energy and
3 million people, it's full-time living. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. And even the people who are
this full number.
Yeah, and even the people who are in that 50 million, right? Who they're putting time and resources and energy into it. So it's important enough to them and it's part of their identity. But that doesn't always equal compensation, and that doesn't always equal a certain status or a certain structure. It also certainly doesn't guarantee rights to that IP that lives, intellectual property that lives on these other platforms, right? And that's not hashed out yet. Who owns that? What are the rights to that, right? There's a little bit for the bigger creators and the bigger.
That's interesting.
But I think that's another big question is if and when that pendulum swings back and that number isn't 50 and maybe it comes to 20 or maybe it's 200 million.
God, we don't know.
Who knows, right? Either way, we and they, creators, need some expectation around, okay, well, what does this mean for me? And is there really room for everyone? And what's the total addressable market of brand dollars that can actually sustain this?
Right.
And I can't tell you the number of young people who are just starting as influencers and creators, and it's a side hustle, who say, well, eventually, I'm going to go full time, right? I work this job, but I'm going to go full time. Last piece I'll say is for the employer. This is also a huge challenge. We're already seeing drop off from corporate America towards entrepreneurship, right? I did it. Tons of friends who are considering it, right? And that is just getting, I think, more complex for those workplaces because they don't know, they might lose a really great employee because they're making $250,000 plus on brand deals. And they're also that employee.
Don't underpay your highly qualified, highly effective corporate employees if you don't want them to go out on your own. I mean, that's my advice to any number of people out there.
Exactly.
100%. It's interesting too, because there's this wild dichotomy between corporate America, burnout, and how just exhausted people are. And they're like, okay, I'm not working a 9 to 5. I'm working a 6 to 10. And, I also want to have a kid or I have kids or just trying to get through the day. You don't even want to do any of that. And, you're just exhausted. And so the notion of being able to shorten your work day, maybe cut it in half, and be in charge of your own destiny. I totally get why people are doing this and charting their own courses. I think my worry though, and this is something that I've discussed with my brother, because my brother is he dabbles in influencing. He's a professional athlete, and so he gets all kinds of brand sponsorships, and he's actually now joining the workforce and just got a big boy job. The family's very proud.
In fairness, he had a super big boy job. He just now got a boring corporate one.
Yes, that is fair. Anyway, something that we've discussed a lot is I do worry though, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this, Claire, somebody who, was in corporate at one point and has, you've paved a very unconventional path in many ways. I really worry that there's so many foundational skills and experiences you get in the traditional workplace that people, especially Gen Z, Gen Alpha plus, if they're just trying to go straight into being a solopreneur, a creator or whatever, are they going to miss those opportunities to develop as both a person and a professional? Because I can tell you, I've been in corporate America for all my 20s. I'm 30 years old. And my God, I have grown so much due to being in a workplace environment, having bosses like Adama, just being around people and having to be accountable to a lot of things. So yeah, I'm curious for your thoughts on that.
I think that human interaction and mentorship is so important to any like next generation of the leader force, if you will. It's a term that a client of mine uses a lot. And this is obviously going to be a big segment now of tomorrow's leader force and tomorrow's leaders, the creators, right? My hope is that, like the Creator Caucus, other communities, sub-communities, groups will emerge that allow for more of that cross collaboration and mentorship within the creator community. The challenge is that there isn't a corporate company like the ones we've all been a part of that sets up that, you know, leadership group or
start a trade association.
I was just thinking, ladies.
So I had
another project.
Like I truly had this conversation last week of what are going to be the trade associations that emerge, the groups that provide resources and care. You know, I think the talent agencies exist. Personally, I love all of them. Shout out to my friends who I work with at all of them. But like, I think that was a really big missed opportunity. And I think it's almost too late for existing companies, talent agencies and beyond to like go back and be like, well, now we care about you.
They were there to help my referrals. We want to make sure that,
you know, you're not just like toll booths for us. And I think that that's going to be hard to go back and try and retrofit. So I'm curious what will emerge on that front. I'm also curious what platforms, we mentioned a couple of them, you know, like Dig and these more community focused platforms, some of which exist in my portfolio, and I'm very lucky to have them. You know, what they will do for more educational and training type content. I say this a lot. It's a great headline from Sociology of Business, which is a good newsletter to subscribe to on Substack. Content is king. Content is queen, but distribution is the kingdom. And I think through, again, differentiated distribution, more sub-communities where creators can actually convene and learn from each other and get some tips and tricks and get the resources that they need. I think that will be really powerful to see who kind of takes the lead on that. It'll be really interesting.
And I think, Claire, like one point to punctuate that, as you were talking about the talent agents sort of like, you know, being a little late to the party, and you're talking about other resources. I think when you're talking about a community that has come together with authenticity and breeds authenticity and attracts authenticity, like the vendors and the providers and the platforms that they are attracted to and they want to grow with, you know, one could expect would have those same traits. And I think that is going to be very interesting for traditional media models of folks that have worked in those communities. So really glad to hear, you know, your perspective working with folks and sort of taking it to a different level and doing it in a different way.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah.
On that front.
All good things do.
All good things do. Well, we're coming to the close, and you know, on our last episode, Claire, you gave some good advice around, you know, creators and kind of how to like conceptualize them. But you know, if somebody's interested in pursuing this as a career, given that was kind of, you know, what we talked about today, are there any groups out there or tools out there that you think creators should utilize, invest in, check out?
So I tell every founder, every creator that I know, that I work with, to sort of build your diet and make it digestible. And that diet has to be a mix of tools and resources. So I have a couple of those, but then also like other people that are creating. And to that point, like find people you want to learn from. It's sort of like creator inception, but there are a lot of creators out there that like they give good tips and tricks for being a creator, right? And hacks, right? The same way we all love our trad wife life hacks we were joking about earlier, like the same thing exists for creators. And again, I mentioned Shira Lazar and others that have really been foundational to this newish creator economy. They've been doing it for decades and they know the ins and outs, right? And they're also starting to build new pillars. So following people that you curate, that you get to pick and opt into and subscribe to. So build that part of other people to follow. And then when it comes to tools, I think that the same way you would build a stack for your home, right? You get security, you get, a sprinkler system, you get insurance, right? Not literally those things, of course, but like get products and tools that make your life easier. So a couple that come to mind, one, Beehive. Tyler Dank, who I'll give him a shout out as well. Friend of mine from college. We've known each other forever. He is, I think, one of the great geniuses of facilitating the creator economy right now. Beehive is a newsletter platform that makes the creator's life easier to engage with their audience, understand how their audience is growing, and really own that audience, something that every other platform doesn't let you do. And you've seen now brands use Beehive to use that to communicate with their communities, right? It doesn't just have to be creators, but it is creator first. So tools like Beehive, tools like ShopMy, which is an incredible storefront that lets you better monetize off of the products that you're promoting and do it with just one click versus setting up some big creator partnership and negotiating contracts. Like automation. So, Beehive, ShopMy, there's so many that are out there, but build the stack, test tools. Most of them are free. See what works, have patience with it, and make it your own. And it's your toolbox and your toolkit. Use it as you would a team, use it as you would your own resources in your house or in your life.
So even though there are like 50 million people who say they're influencers and 2 million.
I cannot get over this.
I may never.
She's gonna be saying it in her sleep tonight. She's gonna 50 million.
Like I am. I'm
Only two. Okay, doing it full time.
Whatever. I mean, I spend a lot of time on the internet. I've never considered wow. I've never wow. I love it. What my question is even though we're hearing these big numbers, is there still room for people to join this economy, or
are we all full of shit? Or
is it saturated? What is going on? How many brand deals could there possibly be out there? I mean,
So same thing that I said about knowing your customer, invite them in, know your investor, invite them in. That's brand advice. For the creator, it's also know your audience and invite them in. And I think, again, have fair expectations with yourself as a creator or an influencer as to how big that audience is and what exactly that audience looks like. So, I think that that's a step that is being often overlooked when people go out and try to conquer the big feat of being a creator or an influencer. It's not just people are sitting there waiting to hear from you. You have to know who these people are. And I say so frequently, again, companies and creators, right? Build a little bit of that audience, but also borrow it. Know where these people are. Find other creators to do collaborations with. So I do think that there is room for everyone. You just have to know how big that room is for you. Know the size of that audience, know the brands, know the relationships you already have, to the point on tools and resources. Copy what other people have done, right? I think that that's also sometimes a big hesitation. And I don't mean literally copy their content. That's plagiarism. I mean, copy their blueprint, right? If somebody has gone out and built a great platform, even if they drive you crazy, even if you don't like what they talk about, if what they've done has worked, study them, right? If you want to go be a rocket scientist, you usually go study other rocket scientists. You're not just out there let me blow some rocket ships. Elon is, but fuck him. So that's kind of, this is advice that
I would give to somebody who was like, oh, I'm looking to get into lobbying, or, you know, this is, yeah.
Totally. And it's not to oversimplify it, but again, I think it does, back to the beginning of our first part of the episode, like it does, that legitimacy gives it the respect that it deserves, which is, it is a real industry. These are real business owners. So give them the advice that I say this to myself, give them the advice that I give to the founder that has $15 million in seed funding, right? And has a board and has a fancy tech stack. Like, same goes for the creator. Get people to invest in your ideas. They may not be giving you money, but get them to invest in your ideas. Get them to like your content. Get them to share it. Bring other people into your ecosystem that you're building. Build a tech stack the way you would if you were building a business, and go try it out. And it might not work. Just like any other company that we have all worked for may not have worked, but it did. And it created all these opportunities for people like us.
Yep.
Yeah, I heard a really great quote recently about like success and how, you know, you're gonna fail. So wouldn't you rather like fail now than wait?
Yeah.
You know, and just prolong it.
And like, what an honor to get to try.
That was how I felt with these ladies when we were, you know, talking about doing a pod. I'm like, my God, we're out of our goddamn minds. Specifically,
you're not. There's so much room, and you all have so much to say and so much to share.
Clearly.
And nobody has the lived experiences that each of you do, the individual level that you all do. And so, you know, for that, there's plenty of room. Nobody can get on and say, I'm Madeline Davenport, which I'm still getting used to, or Adama Iwu, or Sam Corbin, right? And nobody can get on and say all these crazy catchphrases like I just did that, you know, some listeners will love and some of them will hate, but that's cool.
Haters are just fans.
Yeah.
Anyway. Claire, thank you.
Thank you all. Wow.
Thank you for a very like wide ranging and kind of freewheeling conversation.
We probably could have gone another 2 hours.
Probably, but it's 10:30 at night for you two girls. You gotta go to bed.
I know, and you guys, and I'm out of wine and I need to put my pajamas on.
We all have priorities here at the EmpowHERment Show, okay?
Oh my God, I'm so jealous. I just got a text that was like, hey, do you happen to know what the holdup is on the governor's office side for the budget deal? I'm like, no.
Oh, man.
No.
Good night. What is it? Good night and good luck and good night.
Good night and good luck.
Yeah. I'm going to find another glass of wine so I can return these 5 phone calls, which is nowhere near as great as talking to you ladies.
Oh,
all right.
Thanks. Good luck.
Good night.
Good luck. Good night. Bye, listeners.
Bye, listeners.